Ahoy there, goobers. Welcome to Create and Destroy. I'm your host, Dan Donnarumma, and this is episode number 9. Yeah, flying by here. Love it. Very excited about the episode today. Before we get into everything, by the time this episode is released and you're all listening to this, I'm going to be in Maine. I'll be hiking in Acadia National Park, and I cannot wait to get back there. I went there 2-3 years ago and absolutely fell in love with Maine and fell in love with that park. So can't wait to go back. Can't wait to hike in that park again and explore that park again because it's such an incredible place. Now, my guest for you today is Carl Jean. So Carl Jean is a musician, a songwriter. His music is slowcore, droney, gloomy type of music. It's very, very sad. And I got to sit down with Carl and speak with him about his most recent release, which is called Mourning, and it came out several weeks ago, right in the beginning of July. And the album is about the death of his mother. So it's a very emotional album. It's a very sad album, but I do think it's a phenomenal album, and I really appreciate what this album is and what Carl did with this album. And I really look at it as, this is freaking art, man. And, you know, sometimes art is beautiful and sometimes it's lovely to experience, and other times, man, it's gut-wrenching and it's heavy and it's tough to consume. And, you know, at times that's what Mourning is. It's a very heavy album to listen to. It's a very, very, very sad album because it's Carl's very honest and an emotional and vulnerable experience with dealing with the loss of his mother. And so he and I talk about that and kind of get into some other things in regards to his music and him being a songwriter and a musician. So let's get into it. Hope you guys enjoy this interview. All right, dude. So before we delve into your music, I wanted to talk about your Instagram and how you post yours and your girlfriend's music picks of the week, which I think is awesome as hell.
Yeah.
When did you start doing that, and what made you want to do that?
So we just pretty much we moved into a new house. I live with her and her family. And we started designing the room. All of the designing was completely Caitlin's, but she ended up coming up with the idea of having a record shelf, which was the first thing that I agreed on because I usually say no to like everything that she comes up with because we have very different tastes and stuff. But that was the first thing that was like, cool, like let's do it. And we both like to collect, so we just started putting records up there, and then I came up with the idea of just every once in a while changing it up and posting it on the internet and just kind of like trying to get color schemes and like maybe favorite records or, you know, whatever. But yeah, we just started doing it for the fun of it, and it's not really a big thing. We just do it when we remember to do it.
Do you know how many records you have at this point?
I think I started collecting July of last year, and I think I have just about 250 for me. And then with her, it's about the same, if I'm not mistaken, because we have a IKEA shelf, and she has 4 rows, and then I have 4 rows. And all are about the same, so I'd imagine she has about as much as I do.
Nice, man. And I saw on one of your posts you mentioned the new Panopticon, and I also saw you post about the new Snail Mail, which both of those releases I've been really into, especially the Panopticon release.
Yeah,
I love that album. Do you have like, so what have you been jamming recently? Let me ask you that.
Oh man, it's I try to listen to a new thing every day. Today I was listening to the new Immortal album. I listened to Soft Kill's album. But really, I've been jamming, Snail Mail, Culture Abuse. I don't even know. I have a list. Let me pull that up real quick.
So I was so excited for the Soft Kill album as well as the Culture Abuse album, and I was kind of let down by both of them. The Culture Abuse album more so. I still enjoy the Soft Kill album, but I thought it would be like one of my favorite albums of the year. So maybe that's my own fault that I hyped it up so much.
Yeah, for me, I wasn't able to finish the Soft Kill record, today because I was doing other stuff. But that's the first album that I really kind of delved into to them. I had a manager at one point, and the manager was the singer guitar player's fiance, wife, Nicole. So that's how I knew of them, but I never really listened to them all that often. But the Culture Abuse record, I absolutely like. At first, like, I hated it and I wasn't very into it because I got to see them live with Touche Amore, and their live presence is completely different from them on record, in my opinion. And so when I heard the new record, I was like, oh, this is weird. Like, it's very, very different, but I also enjoy it, like, the more that I listen to it.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to remember what their last record was called. I think it was called Peach or something like that.
Yep.
And yeah, it's definitely different. And maybe I got to give it a few more listens. The one single that they released, I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but I do really like that song. I think that song's awesome.
The Be Kind to the Bees?
No. The other one that is it Be Kind to the Bees? This is my story. I can't remember the name of that song.
I know what you're talking about, but I don't know what it's called either.
Yeah, that song is rad as fuck. Do you have a favorite album of the year so far, or some albums that are at the top of your list?
Yeah, I have. I'm looking at my list now. The Portal album was pretty good. The Turnstile, even though a lot of people are like split about it, for me, when it comes to music, it's just like, especially like hardcore stuff, like I want it to be fun, and that Turnstile record is just perfect for me. The Fiddlehead record, Springtime and Blind.
Oh, dude, that record is so awesome.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do I got on here? Baptists, that's a big one for me.
Yes, dude, that album is so freaking good.
They're like, for me, it's like one of those things where they're heavy, but they don't have like any breakdowns whatsoever.
Yeah.
And it's like the perfect, just like pissed off, aggressive sort of music.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that album so far.
Yeah, a couple others were the Bong Ripper record. I got to see them last night, and they were phenomenal. And then Birds in Row and Imperial Triumphant.
I haven't listened to the Birds in a Row record. I didn't even realize that it was released yet.
Yeah, it came out on the 13th.
Damn, I got to get on that.
Yeah, it's so good. I was a fan of their Collections record, I think it's called. And then they put out You, Me, and the Violence. And then I think the album after that was called Personal War, and I didn't listen to that one because I heard that people just weren't into it, so I didn't give it a chance. But this one is like front to back, just so good.
Dude, that's one of the things that I enjoy about following you on Instagram, is that there's been a few times where you'll post about a record that you're listening to, and I didn't even realize the band released an album, like of Feather and Bone. I had no clue that they were releasing a new album, and then when I saw your post, like, oh shit, yes, I got to check this album out.
Yeah, they were awesome. I got to see them on their tour with Tomb Mold, and because I live in the Baltimore area, I guess. I mean, I really live near Pennsylvania, but because the shows that I go to are Baltimore, D.C., the openers for that show were Genocide Pact and Ilsa, which was like stacked lineup front to back. It was literally just like Relapse Records and Tomb Mold, which is awesome.
That's awesome. How is the music scene by where you live?
You know,
you said you're from close to Baltimore?
Yeah, I live about 45, 50 minutes north of Baltimore. But for me, it's like I go everywhere. I go to Pennsylvania for shows. I go to Baltimore for shows. But where I base myself around is Baltimore. The Baltimore scene is awesome. There's a lot of great bands coming out. The hardcore scene is starting to come back up a little bit. Doing a lot more shows, and then you got the doom scene and all that stuff.
Nice, man. So yeah, I think that's a pretty good segue into you and your music. So you're a musician and you make music that is sad as fuck, but I love it. And you under the moniker Carl Jean. How would you describe your music for someone who's never heard your music before?
Usually I just say it's atmospheric, ambient sort of stuff. I don't really... When I started doing this stuff in 2012, I think was when I started this project, under a different name. But when I started this, it was mainly just to be atmospheric, not necessarily spooky, but like have that kind of like eerie sort of vibe to it. And at that time when I started, I wasn't even familiar with like anyone in the genre. The only person that I was aware of was Chelsea Wolfe, and I didn't want to sound... I wanted to sound like her, but at the same time I didn't. But that was the only artist that I knew. So as I was progressing through the years, I've gotten to learn and hear other bands like Emma Ruth Rundle and Planning for Burial and all that sort of stuff. But yeah.
What drew you towards making your music with the sound that you make? So yeah, what drew you towards making that style or that sound of music?
I just loved the when I did it. I just loved when I first started doing it. It was more on the drone side, and that was more so just to like let out any sort of frustration, anger, sadness, anything like that. And it was just something that nobody was really doing in this area, and I just kind of wanted to just do stuff on my own and just try to make weird music.
How long have you been playing instruments and making music for?
So I started out in 2009. It was when I picked up a guitar, and I just started immediately. As soon as I got a guitar, I didn't even really learn how to actually play. I just started putting my fingers in places and hoped for the best. So I started in 2009, and then I was also playing piano and stuff like that. And yeah.
And were you in any bands prior to this project?
No, I've always done solo stuff. There was like a brief period where I was like partially in a deathcore band in like 2010, 2011, but I was in it for a week and then was just like, nah, this isn't what I want to do. But for the most part, it's always been just me.
And you mentioned before that you used a different name. So you used to go under the moniker Naked Cult. Why the change in name?
So it actually started out as Butt Naked in 2000 something. And then I was like, after a while, it was like, that's really dumb. Nobody's going to want to like book me or care with the name that I have or take it seriously. So I changed it to Naked. And then right around that time when I released Hopeless, which was in 2015, I wanted to take it more seriously, and the name was already taken by some like industrial band from Japan that was like very popular. So I changed it to Naked Cult, and then while I was doing Naked Cult, I realized that booking under that name is even harder than it would be under Butt Naked.
Did people just not take it seriously?
Yeah, I mean, there were people, like, if you came out to a show or something, like, people would pay attention and be like, whoa, like, this is sad, this is, you know, intense stuff. And if I were to post online, people wouldn't really care because it just seems like it's a dumb name. And so nobody would, you know, whatever. But I changed it to Carl Jean when I put out Feel, the EP, because I felt that it's my first and middle name. So I just felt that it was just more genuine, more this is me than anything else.
Yeah, and you've got a lot of music that you've recorded and released. How many releases did you wind up putting out under Naked Cult before switching to Carl Jean?
So under the Butt Naked name, it was just a EP. Naked was 2-3 full lengths, and then Naked Cult was just a split. And then Carl Jean has an EP, a full length, and then the new record that I did.
And when you were first starting out with Naked Cult, what was your hope for the band at that time, or for this project at that time?
Just really to release music, to write. I've never really been about pursuing anything like crazy, like touring nonstop or doing anything like that. I mean, it'd be cool, but at the same time, like, I'm not too stressed about it. When I first started doing it, it was more so about just letting out emotions, all that sort of stuff, because I have a really hard time talking about that stuff. Like, I'd prefer to not talk about it to like a counselor or something like that. So I just use that as my way to vent, as my way to just let everything that I can out. So it never really was meant to really go anywhere or do anything. It was just meant to just have some sort of outlet to let everything out.
And has it been a cathartic release for you, writing the music that you write?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, sometimes it feels nice to, like, I'll have like a rough patch that I'll go through and I'll do a show or something like that, and it makes me feel so much better. It makes me, you know, just allow myself to let it go. I like to say that my live performance is much different than the recorded versions, than me on record, because I try to be more personal when I'm performing, instead of the isolated sort of feeling on the records.
And shit, I remember at one point you and I talked briefly on Instagram. You came up to Rochester, or was it Buffalo, and played a show?
Yeah, I've done 2 or 3 shows in Rochester at the Vineyard Community Space.
That space is awesome.
Yeah, I heard that I was in the works of setting something up for October, and I was asking the guy who I've booked with before, but apparently the guy isn't doing shows there anymore, or is right now isn't trying to do anything. So I did a show with a local band from my area called Mother Moon. They're like this cool, I don't even know how to describe them because they're constantly evolving and constantly changing. But they were at that time like a post-rock kind of vibe. Now they're more on the post-metal doom sort of side of things. And then I did a solo show up there on my own.
Nice, man. Yeah, hopefully you can make it back here. I would love to be able to see you play.
Definitely.
Now, so you mentioned your most recent release, Mourning, and that came out, was it 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago?
It was July 3rd. I'm not sure if that was
a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that album were all the songs written the first month preceding your mother's suicide, or were they just written within a 1 month time period?
So the way that it went, I actually have a lot of stuff that I ended up cutting. This release was supposed to be like 10 songs or something like that, but I ended up cutting a lot of the stuff. The lyrics, what I wanted to do was, I knew that I needed to like talk about it. I needed to talk about my feelings and that sort of stuff. So what I would do is I would write down the date and write about how I'm feeling. And so the lyrics themselves were personal thoughts between the first month, and then the music came afterwards. That's usually how I try to do things, because I try to, like, how I'm feeling, I have like a certain idea for how I want it to sound. So I try to do that. But after that first month, it just got so hard to write, to talk about anything. And I kind of isolated myself for a couple months because it was just too painful to write about. So I just kind of stopped.
Yeah, I remember when I saw what this release was going to be about, I was totally shocked by that. And then when I listened to the album for the first time from beginning to end, dude, that it was a total gut punch, man. Total gut punch. Like, the best way that I could describe it for me was last year. Was it last year or the year before? Whenever it was, the Mount Erie release, A Crow Looked at Me, which both albums deal with death in a very intense and like cerebral way, but obviously different styles of music. When I listened to that album, I had a very similar feeling as to how when I listened to your album, just totally gut punched, man. I had to like get up from my desk and go walk around for a little bit because I just felt so uneasy. And so just like, holy shit, man, that was really tough to listen to.
Yeah, the Mount Erie record came out. I listened to it and I was like, man, this is like really hard to listen to, just like how you were feeling. And then once everything happened, it was like a completely different like way of listening to it, because like it was very similar. Like I can relate to a lot of the things that he was talking about in the record. And my girlfriend actually bought me the vinyl to listen to as a way of just being like, you really like. She felt as though it was like a way to help me cope with everything, and it really helped. That record was just amazing, front to back. Like, honestly, like that was one of my top 5 records of last year.
Yeah, Mourning and that album, like, I literally, the music on both are incredible. They're so saddening. Especially the one aspect of Mourning that really, to me, is like fucked me up was the fact that you have voicemails, a voicemail from your grandmother. I'm assuming that is in, I think the song is called Funeral Service. Correct me if I'm wrong. It's you reciting what I'm assuming is the your mother's eulogy. And then the final track on the record is the investigator reading your mother's final words. And dude, that listening to that last track was, I seriously was just completely dumbfounded and blown away by it.
Yeah, the intro was the voicemail that my grandmother gave me, because my mom would constantly, every day, she would call the same, 6-7 people, and she would call them all throughout the day. And at that point, it was like noon, and she hadn't called anybody. My stepdad was trying to figure out what was going on, which I don't believe anything of that. But so the voicemail is her calling me, trying to figure out what's going on. The funeral service song is me just reading the speech that I wrote about my mom. And then when the investigator showed up, my stepdad was like, "Hey, like, this guy's coming over. Don't worry about it. You don't have to come over." And I was like, "Nope, I'm leaving work now. I'm coming over now." And I recorded every bit of everything. And I think I ended up doing it was like an hour meeting, and I recorded everything because I needed to hear everything and to try to just understand everything that the guy was saying.
And in the voicemail that your grandmother left, I think I'm hearing her ask, "Has your mother come home yet?" Because she wasn't able to reach her, right?
Yeah, so the night that everything happened, they came home from vacation. So it was my mom, my stepdad, and his family. And I usually don't go on the family vacations. So they went, I did a show on the 19th in Baltimore. And I came home, they came home. And so she was trying to figure out, she was like, "Hey, I haven't heard from your mom since she came back from the vacation. I was just trying to see if everything was okay." And I was at work at the time, so I wasn't able to answer the phone call from my grandma.
And what made you want to open the album with your grandmother's voicemail?
I guess it was more a sort of thing where I kind of, when coming up with how I was going to present the record, I kind of wanted things to start from before it happened up until the final thing with the investigator. It just kind of it made it connect in a way. I guess I just wanted to have a story with it, I guess.
And so Carl Updike is your stepfather, correct?
Yeah.
And so I read on your Bandcamp that the investigators think that something happened between him and your mother prior to her taking her life.
Yes.
Do they have any idea as to what might have happened?
So in the in a part of the investigation, they had said that she was found with I forgot what the word is. It was something on the back of her neck that they found. I can't think of the word, but it was essentially like a giant internal bruise that essentially only happens when somebody is actually being hit. Or I forgot what he was saying about it, but it was essentially like the normal, what he was trying to say was that the normal convulsions of dying by overdose is nothing compared to what they found, what the doctor found. And they were essentially saying that they believe that there was some sort of altercation that happened prior, which I wasn't aware of because I was out at this show and they came home just before me. So I don't really know what happened, but they said that they can't rule it as a suicide. So her cause of death is unknown.
Holy shit, man. And so are they still investigating everything?
I have no clue. It's actually kind of weird because once everything happened, once they said everything that happened, I moved out, and I moved in with my girlfriend and her family. I since then haven't spoken to, haven't seen, haven't tried to even communicate with him. The last thing that he said to me was that I had locked the bedroom door and he wanted me to get in there and do something in my room, to which I just didn't respond because I don't even care. But yeah, I don't know. I don't think anything happened. I don't try to like pay attention to anything that's going on with that side of the family after all that stuff happened.
Yeah, and I can totally understand why, man. Reading the story that you recounted about your 5th birthday was super saddening, but at the same time also endearing and heartwarming. And you mentioned that your mom put together this like pirate themed party for you in your backyard and that she built a 15-foot cardboard ship for pirate ship. And I was just thinking how awesome that would be if that was my 5th birthday. How awesome was that ship and that party for you?
That was the coolest like birthday ever. For most of like my life, I didn't really get a birthday party. My sister didn't really get a birthday party either. So sometimes a couple times my mom would go out of her way and do something crazy, and she went above and beyond, and like she came up with this script that she read. She was the narrator, and it was like this cardboard pirate ship that took up our whole entire backyard, and there was like 20 or 30 like metal chairs for parents and stuff to sit, and she gave them ice cubes and like goldfish and made some like story about how we were in the Mediterranean Sea and we were being attacked by the flood or something to that extent, and she had the parents throw stuff at us, and it was just a really cool birthday party. It was the only like big birthday party that I ever really had. So it's always something that I remember and I think about and I smile about. And that was the whole point of that speech, was to try to, because at that time I didn't know what I know now. So it was very like something that I wanted people to remember, is that she was a great person and that she went out of her way to do things when you least expected it.
Yeah, I thought it was a really a great story, and everything that you read I thought was really nice. What was your thoughts, or what emotions went through you the first time you listened to Mourning from start to finish?
So there's 3 versions of the record. There's the pre-production that I did. I did a studio version that was done by my friends Keith and Lance, who play in a band called Sharptooth. And then there was the one that I recorded on July 3rd. The pre-production was just kind of this idea that I sent over to Keith, who was doing the recording and mixing. And then the studio version is a very different atmosphere than the one that I ended up using, which is the one that I put out. Listening to it is very difficult because the intro originally was like me just like losing it about my stepfather, and it was just very like difficult to listen to. And now even to this day, that was recorded in like February, so I've kind of been sitting on it for a while. But listening to it when I first finished the record that I ended up putting out, it still is hard. I can't get through all of it usually. I stop after the I think, which one is it? It's the funeral service, and then it's Baron. I usually try not to listen after Baron because the suicide note is just way too much for me to handle.
Yeah, man, I can totally understand. What does this album mean to you?
It was really just my way of letting out emotions, trying to a lot of people were trying to help me because they knew that I wasn't doing too well, and that I wasn't taking it well, but I didn't really try to take their help. So this record was more of a okay, you want to know how I'm feeling? Here it is. It was just one of those things where like I just wanted to let it out, and then I really wanted to kind of just give a big fuck you to my stepdad, because like there's no reason for any of that shouldn't have happened whatsoever.
Has this album helped you with the healing process?
I'm not quite sure. I know that it's nice to. I don't know the words. It's definitely a good feeling when I'm performing to play these songs, to let out everything and just kind of blow off some steam. But it's important for me to document like all these feelings that I had and all these, just feelings.
Right when the album was released, like a few days after that, I was having a conversation with my wife and our friend Trisha, and I was telling her about the album and what it's about. And then our conversation just kind of went towards like self-assisted suicide and someone's right to end their life. And it just made me think, because we had been talking about doing this, what are your thoughts on someone's right to end their own life?
I think that's a very... Are you talking about like medical or like...
Yeah.
So I'm kind of... I don't exactly know how I feel about it. I know that if you're like terminally ill, or you have cancer and you don't have much longer to live, the idea of knowing that you only have X amount of days, or they think that you're only gonna live that long, it's kind of haunting and kind of tough. So I do kind of feel that people should have that right. If they're mentally ill, or they have, not mentally ill, if they're, if they're sick and they definitely have like nothing left, like there's no chance whatsoever that they'll survive. I definitely think that that should be something that someone should be able to do with their, I think there should be some sort of like, I guess mental test. I don't know how to really word it.
Yeah, I struggled with, because when this topic was discussed, I was like, oh yeah, I am all in favor of that. And then my friend Trisha started bringing up some examples, and that made me rethink things, because I feel like it's a very fine line that you cross from being, that this is acceptable in this situation, but in another situation, maybe there's more gray to it than you think. I feel like it's one of those topics that I'm very, I don't know if undecided is the right term, but I feel like there's a lot of gray with that.
Yeah, definitely. I really think that it should be something that, not like a spur of the moment, like, yep, this is what I want to do. I definitely think that these people should be, considering everything, and should be, at ease with that decision, and not like a spur of the moment, do you want to do this? Yes, I do. Sort of thing. I definitely think that there should be some sort of testing or something like that, to really make sure that that's okay.
Were any of your other releases up to this point as emotionally or mentally taxing as Mourning was for you?
No. A lot of my stuff it's always been about letting out emotions or letting out stuff. The record Feel, and then the EP that came with it called Heal, was really about me trying to mentally get better. I've been struggling with the loss of my father for 8 or 9 years now, and it was something that I was just starting to get over, because that one was really hard for me. I was 16 at the time, and it was just one of those things where I couldn't handle it, being that young, and so that record was more about the healing process rather than the mental problems that I was having with everything.
Yeah, you have a song, I believe it's called Orphans, correct?
Yep.
Yeah, and I remember reading that song, the lyrics for that, for the first time, and just being like, well, fuck, holy shit, dude. And just thinking about, man, I can't even imagine what it must be like to lose both of your parents. And I don't even have a very good relationship with my father, but to just not to lose both parents would be, I would imagine, be so extremely tough.
Yeah, it's that song was written on my birthday. She committed suicide on the 20th, and my birthday is on the 24th. So it was just one of those things where, like, I was just feeling completely alone. Like, all of my family was, my mom's side was the family that was more around. I don't really have much communication with my dad's side. That kind of disappeared after a couple years, and I haven't really heard from anybody, or even know what their, like, last names are, because they've all, like, my dad had, like, a sister, and her name changed and all that stuff, but my mom's side was present completely for the funeral and stuff like that, but they were never really that close with me, so it was just really about feeling completely alone and not having anyone or anything to talk to.
Do you ever feel anxious about releasing your music because the the content of your lyrics are very, very personal. They're they're very morose and sad.
Yeah, it's one of those things where with this record in particular, when I first did it, the idea was to release it sometime in the summer, but it kind of got held back because it was one of those things where it was like, do I want to release it? Do I not want to release it? Do I just want to put it on the internet and then not say anything about it and just kind of see what happens? But it was a lot of trying to figure out how I should go about releasing it, how I should go about doing it. Because I was, when I first put it out, I was afraid that I was, even though the record is meant to be just me letting out all my frustrations, I felt as though I might have gone a little too far, and I was I constantly was fighting with myself over whether or not I wanted to release it. I definitely got anxious with this release, but with the other releases, not nearly as much.
When you say feeling like you might have gone too far in what way?
The last song, the Suicide Note song, I wanted to, with that song, I don't know, that was just the complete turning point of everything. And I felt as though putting that clip of the investigator was doing a little bit too much, and I struggled with the idea of whether or not it was okay to put it out. But ultimately, I decided to put it out because it's the whole entire record is super personal, and I just kind of wanted to have that documented, have those feelings documented and shown.
Did you speak with any of your family prior to releasing this and kind of say, this is what I'm thinking about doing, and this is what these songs are about, or this is some of the stuff that are in these songs?
No, I don't really have any contact with any of my family. I haven't spoken to my sister since it happened, because she didn't want to be a part of it, and my mom didn't want her to be a part of it because of other issues. But besides that, the only person in my family that was somewhat relatively close to me was my grandma, and I haven't seen her since the last meeting of everyone in the family, which was a week after the funeral service.
Is it ever hard for you to perform the certain songs, or on a given night maybe one song, because of what the song is about?
Yeah, usually I try to switch up my sets based on how I'm feeling. So there's some shows where I'll show up with a set in mind, and then I'll just completely play something else because I of how anxious or sad I'm feeling about playing this stuff. I usually end up crying at least once during the set.
Shit, man, I'm surprised it's not more. If I were you, I'd be up there freaking bawling my eyes out.
Yeah, it's tough. I just kind of try to, when it comes to performing, I try to blank out my mind and just play the songs. And for the most part, I think the last show that I did, I played most of the record, and by the end of it, I was I don't want to talk to anybody. I don't want to be near anybody. I just want to get off the stage and just do something else. Because usually by the end of the set, I'm like, okay, I'm done. I don't want to do this anymore. And there's been times where I have like cut a song or two while performing because I just can't do it.
And the art for Mourning, is it the same person that did the art for the Feel Heal release?
Yes. So there's a cool story behind this guy. He emailed me off of the Naked Bandcamp and was just like, I love you. It was very like broken English, so it was difficult to figure out what he was doing, what he was saying. And he sent me this piece, and he was like, I did this piece, this artwork piece off of your album from 2014. I want to show you this. I really appreciate your music. It's very, soothing for me. He relates to it. And I was like, where are you from? And he told me he was from Iran. And then he said that he wanted to do an album art for me. And I was like, absolutely. Like, his artwork is just crazy. And I've never seen anything like it before. And so he did the album art for Feel. And then I emailed him, I think it was like 7 months ago, about doing the album for this or the artwork for this, and I sent him over the pre-production stuff, and he kind of came up with that based on the lyrics and the music itself.
That's so awesome. Do you ever like anticipate or think about, when you're releasing music, someone connecting to your music in a deep way and allowing it to help them deal with stuff that they're going through?
Yeah, I mean, I ultimately put it on the internet so people can hear it, and so maybe there's someone out there who can relate, who can appreciate the stuff that I'm putting out, because ultimately, like, I don't want anyone to feel the way that I'm feeling or the way that I have felt. So it's important for me to try to share the music, or try to, try to make it relatable, I guess. Yeah.
And for me, like, when I'm depressed, all I want to do is listen to depressing music, and that's probably how I discovered your music, was trying to find some other like sad type of bands to listen to. And so what type of stuff do you find yourself gravitating towards when you feel sad, or what type of music do you listen to?
Recently it's been a lot of like just black metal. I've been on this like kick of death metal and black metal. But for the most part, it's just trying to find the most aggressive, most like just pissed off music I possibly can find, which usually ends up being like Primitive Man or, something to that extent, just to, I don't know, just listening to similar stuff doesn't always help me. I really do enjoy listening to Julian Baker a lot. When I get in those sort of moods, because Julian Baker kind of writes relatable things, and it's easy to sing along to and just kind of feel better after singing.
It's funny, man. When I was younger, I would listen to just like a ton of like hardcore punk and metal, and that was the stuff that I would typically want to listen to when I was upset or sad or whatever. And now if I'm feeling depressed, like, I can't really get into that sort of stuff. And I seem to want to listen to more like gloomy, sad music. And I have to almost be in a, as weird as this might sound, like in a happy mood to listen to like metal and stuff, which is a complete opposite to how I was when I was younger.
Yeah. I just, it's just more aggressive music listening to hardcore, and it just kind of, it makes me, like, it just kind of, hardcore music has always been, like, in my opinion, one of the best ways to let out frustrations, to let out anger. And yeah, it just, for me, it's like I listen to gloomy music when I'm feeling okay, which is, I guess, is the exact opposite from you. It just I don't know, it's just something about heavier music that just makes me feel better.
So what's next for you and your music?
The only thing I've this year in particular, I've kind of just slowed down completely. I'm hoping to do more stuff. Usually if somebody hits me up and is trying to do a show, I usually say yes to it. But other than that, I'm planning a tour in October for the record that I put out, Mourning. And besides that, there's nothing really else that I have going on.
And how can people listen to your music or stay up to date with what you've got going on?
I am on Bandcamp, carlgene.bandcamp.com, Facebook, Carl Gene Music. I'm on Spotify, all the typical streaming services. Yeah.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
And there you have it, folks. That's my conversation with Carl Gene. I really enjoyed our conversation about bands and albums that we've been listening to lately. I always love speaking to people about music. It's something that I really enjoy, so I'm happy that he and I got to have that discussion. I'm also very appreciative of the fact that Carl was willing to sit down with me and allowed me to ask him questions about an experience that must have been just so emotional and so traumatic for him. And to be open to doing that with me means a lot to me. You know, when I started this podcast, my hope was to have conversations just like this, sitting down with artists and getting an opportunity to ask them questions about what goes on when they're creating. And, you know, I love that I was able to have that opportunity to speak with Carl and ask him the questions that I did. So thank you so much, Carl. I'll make sure to add links in the show notes to how you can follow Carl on social media and stay up to date with what he's doing with his music, as well as how you can listen to his music. So I'll make sure to add a link to his Bandcamp in the show notes. As always, make sure to follow Create and Destroy on social media so you can find Create and Destroy on Instagram, Tumblr, and Facebook, all at Create and Destroy Podcast. And then on Twitter at CreateDestroy_. Give us a follow on whatever podcast app you are using to listen to this show. Rate us on iTunes if you can. I would greatly appreciate it. All right, guys, as always, get out there, create something cool. I will see you next time.